Hey everybody, today I'm with Chuck Nettles. You may or may not know Chuck, but I just have so much respect for this guy, and you're going to see why. Today we talked about his faith journey, a rough middle where God became real through tragedy, and what it means to maintain integrity as you lead in the business world. This is a great conversation. You're just going to love it. You're going to love Chuck. Chuck Nettles, thanks so much for joining us today,
man. My pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I just want to say thanks because not only have you just been such a great supporter of me, but you've just been a really great friend. Yeah. And just publicly, I think people need to see that because you and Sarah have supported us well through the years, but I feel like we've really grown close to one another. And I could share what I'm really thinking. You could share what you're really thinking. Yep. And I just have a lot of respect for you. I just have a lot of I even look up to you, man, in a lot of ways. I don't know if I ever told you this, but I feel like sometimes I'll be in situations with people and I'll say, what would Chuck Nettles do in this situation?
Be careful with that sometimes.
Yeah. But it's true, man. It seems like you situationally, you're very wise.
Thanks.
You know how to handle things. And
Thanks.
I know where that comes from because we're friends. You had a really awesome upbringing with your dad. He was very purposeful in training you and stuff like that.
He was.
Why don't you tell everybody who you are? People in the church know you, but maybe they don't. Well, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thanks. And I think it goes without saying, we think the world of you and Lauren, and I'd reiterate the same thing you just said. We've had such a great time, just being your friends and, watching you guys grow in ministry and look up to you in a huge way. And I can look back at different moments in time in the last, 12, 13 years and say every great moment you've been there and every tragic moment you've been there too. So just grateful for you. Yeah. Grew up in the South Hills of Pittsburgh, was born in Baltimore. My parents moved here.
I always forget about Baltimore.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember it all either. So they moved here when before I turned a year old. And so Pittsburgh's always been home.
Yeah.
Went to school in Ohio at Ohio University and came right back home. Went into the insurance business right out of school and met my wife shortly after graduating school, Sarah, and and then just have that meeting Sarah obviously changed the course of my life for the better, and we have a beautiful family, 3 little kids, 8, 6, and 3, Charlotte, Abigail, and Nicholas, and it's fast and furious right now, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. You and Sarah both married well. I remember meeting you though around, I think it was, do you remember the Wexford Starbucks we ran into each other?
I do.
You gave me your business card.
I do. Yeah.
How old were you at that time?
So that would probably been the fall of 2012. So I would have been 26, 27.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
26,
I had maybe 24, 25 in my head, and I'm like, 24.
Oh, no, you're right. My math's gotten worse. 24, 25. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you were right.
Yeah, I just remember, sometimes I remember weird details like that, but I'm like, this guy's going somewhere. He's handing me a business card. He's in this awesome trench coat. He's got this sweet suit on. It was a cold day, You're like, let me buy your coffee for you.
Fake it till you make it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you had just come to the Young Adults Ministry 19 North, right before then or something, and that was the first actual time we got to really catch up with each other.
Yeah, and what you didn't know at the time was I had been kind of watching you from afar, and you've played a huge role in my faith walk since before that time until today. Just the conversation we're having, catching up before this, and I grew up in the Presbyterian church. My parents we religiously went to Presbyterian church and have some great memories there, and still have some good friends from that experience. And my parents were very purposeful about us being in church, which I'm super grateful for. I think, as time goes on, we all go to high school and we go to college, and I was one of the ones that drifted away from that. And I met my wife at a Pirate game by happenstance.
Somebody else was on a date or something?
Yeah, May. So that would have been May of 2012.
Okay.
My wife, Sarah, and one of my best friends, Chris Wilcox, were set up to go on a blind date. And,
okay.
Yeah, so Sarah worked with his mother, and they were too chicken to go out on a blind date together. So they got a group of guys and a group of girls together. Turned out to be 13 guys and 2 girls, and So that was,
A group.
I don't know. That was a group, and I don't know how I survived that and ended up with Sarah. I certainly got lucky in that regard. And
were you impressed at how big of a Pirate fan she was?
Big time, and still to this day. I mean, she's probably looking at the box score right now from last night and figuring out how that error happened.
Is her dad a big fan or like?
Yeah, her family's big Pittsburgh sports fan. Yeah, for sure. And
but those times like those were the dark ages, and they were coming out of the dark ages really during those times.
And it was
20 years of losing seasons.
It was fun for us to really be following the Pirates in that season, 2012 through 2015, and Sarah and I went on a date shortly after that, and that was just a turning point in my life. I was clearly falling for this girl, and she said, "Hey, I really like you." I said, "Hey, I really like you too. That's great." And she said, "I just want you to know that one day my husband's going to love Jesus." I'm like, whoa, I'm like,
she just came out.
I'm still hungover from the night before, and struggling, struggling to get to my senses there. And she said, "I've been going to this youth or that young adult ministry called 19 North up in Cranberry at Victory Family Church, and there's a cool group of people there." She was born and raised in Clarion County, and she had just gotten a job at Upper St. Clair to teach in their middle school. And she was faithfully driving up to Victory to go to church and go to 19 North on Saturday evenings. And it was a convenient place for her because her parents living just 30 miles down Route 80, it was kind of a central meeting place for her. Mm. So for her parents, they would meet there and go to church together on Sunday. She'd go up on Saturday nights because she had met you and Lauren. And so she said, "Why don't you try coming up there to 19 North with me?" And so I remember, I like this girl enough that I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna go to church and see what this is all about. I'll try this Jesus thing out and see what that's all about. And I remember driving up there the first time we drove up together, and I'm thinking, we just passed 200 churches. What in the world are we doing driving an hour up to this church? And I can still remember, that old auditorium at Victory, and I had never met you, never met anybody in that building except for one family, the Stanchaks. I had known Ellie and Hunter from high school.
That's right. Okay.
And that was an immediate.
Did you golf with Hunter too?
So Hunter would have been maybe a freshman when I was a senior, and then he would have been a senior when my brother was a freshman.
Okay.
And then in Ellie, I had known a little bit more.
Are that far apart?
6 years apart. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, he's taller, skinnier, better looking, but he got I got the age on him.
I don't agree about the taller.
Well, the taller for sure. Taller for sure. I tell you, when I walked in, I immediately saw Ellie on the stage, and I don't know if I've even ever shared this with her, but that was like an immediate comfort for me that I knew I knew somebody like this. Wasn't
crazy.
This wasn't that far out there for me because I knew somebody immediately, and then. I think I've told you this before, but I saw you on stage. I'm like, man, that's like it wasn't an intimidating thing. You weren't wearing a robe. Yeah. It was a normal, like this guy's, I could look up to this guy. And I saw the relationship that you and Lauren had. And, and we just kept coming back, and we got I look at the moments that God has showed up in my life, and that certainly being one of them. But that whole season, I remember there was a series that went on at Victory that you and Pastor John Nuzzo kind of piggybacked on the steps of what does it mean to become a Christian? What does it mean to be in relationship with Jesus? Yeah. What is water baptism? What is the baptism of the Holy Spirit? And just understanding, like I got like a crash course in developing a relationship with Jesus that summer, and it happened immediately after I showed up. Yeah. It probably felt like normal for people that had been doing it for a long time, but it was like I walked into Christianity 101, and for the first time felt like I had a true relationship with Jesus, and a real connection with people that, we were just talking about Walker Hayes earlier. He's got he's got a song called Craig, and it was a guy that he had met at a church, and the story of the song is that he didn't really understand church, but he, like, this Craig guy I could understand, and
that's cool.
I relate to that a lot in that season at Victory with you guys, that, like, hey, I don't really understand what's going on here, but, like, I really like these people, and I like what they seem to have with Jesus, with God, and that was attractive to me. So that's probably what got me to come back.
That's what we see in the ministry of Jesus. You see sinners were, and you called yourself a sinner. I'm not calling you one. You know what I mean? You're hungover from the night before. That sort. But they're comfortable in the presence of Jesus, and that's the way it should be with people in the church. But unfortunately, it's not always that way. You find sometimes people don't in the church don't have the best intentions. It might be selfish. I don't know that, I wouldn't say the whole church is bad. I don't want to say that by any means, but, like, sometimes you get a couple bad experiences in there, or you're in a place that just doesn't know you. Yeah. And you're like, I can't relate to this at all. It doesn't make any sense. It has to be relatable, It does.
And the person also has to be ready to, I could, now, and I know I've had this conversation with you, I've looked back on my childhood.
Yeah.
And I've run into people that I grew up with at the Presbyterian church that I was going to. And I'm like, man, if I was ready to receive then, there was some really good stuff there.
Right.
And there were great people there, people that had a relationship with Jesus and,
genuinely cared.
Right. Yeah. Right. And, my parents being two of them. And, I wasn't there yet when I was in high school, like many of us aren't. And so that's God's timing is perfect. And
What led you to the decision other than Sarah? Like, was there anything going on in your life just to follow Jesus? And I remember you go to the Bridge, right? Every year still.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you, I remember I'd gotten out of a relationship after college, and, I just felt very empty. Drinking a lot, like watching the lights come on at the bar, seemingly every single night, and just in a very lonely space. And I remember just kind of like calling out to somebody or something, didn't even know what it was or who it was, and just saying, like, man, I need some sort of connectivity here, because it's not. I'm lonely. I'm lost. I'm relying on booze and other things, and and God showed up. A couple days later from that moment, I remember where I was sitting in a parking lot trying to decide if I should turn this car on or not, and a couple days later, after crying out like that, walking home from someplace too far away, a couple days later, my buddy says, "Hey, do you want to go to a Pirate game? Yeah, there's a group of girls getting together and a group of guys getting together." So that was probably a turning point. But I think watching, seeing my wife's faith, and
she genuinely believes what she's.
Yes.
This isn't made up. This isn't contrived, and she holds to her standards. Like, she's awesome, but still a blast.
Right, and that's where
she's one of the funniest people I know.
She is. I will give her credit. I will give her that credit. Sometimes I try to keep her honest, and have her work on her game a little bit. But no, she's awesome. Seeing her genuine faith. Yeah. And and also it was a period of time where I needed to dry out a little bit, and so hanging out with her in better settings, going to a lot of Pirate games and Steeler games, and I found a lot more joy in my life at that point. So that was and really, like you talked about us running into each other at Starbucks, and I feel like we've been great friends ever since that day. And, I've looked at you as like a big brother. Seeing people like you, people like David Falk, people like Nate Madden.
David put his arm around you too.
Big time.
Right away.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. And, when I think of that Craig song, I think of guys like you and David. Yeah. And, I remember like David and I went on a golf trip together early on in my faith walk, and just seeing that there were people out there that cared enough about strangers that they would reach out to you like that. That was
He
a
looked
that was
out.
a-
I
that was a
remember
big
you would
moment.
come to church and he would look for you every week.
Yeah.
Right? Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And
100%.
Didn't he give you a little bit of a tip one time? Like,
Yeah.
what did he do? I remember the story vaguely in the back of my mind, but it was
Yeah, we had created this great relationship. Still have a great relationship today. Another big brother figure of mine, and we'd probably been going to church for a couple of years at that. I had probably been going to church consistently for a couple of years at that point, and he would always, like you said, seek me out, and I would seek him out because it was like a comfort factor. And then he explained to me what an evangelist is, and he's like, "My man, I love you. We'll catch up. We'll catch up for coffee anytime you want. Let's go play golf together." He said, it's why don't we go find some people to chat with. He's like, "You and I already know each other. Let's go find some people we don't know." And
Yeah.
that was a huge moment for me of just spreading love to people that you're not already tight with. And I've watched that with you and him and other buddies of ours.
Is it hard?
church.
Was it naturally hard for you to go and have a conversation with people? Like,
No, I think that's probably always been something that's it was in that setting,
sure.
right? Because anytime there's a subject matter that you're not totally familiar with, that can be a little bit
Intimidating, yeah.
little intimidating. But no, I hope I come across as somebody that genuinely loves people, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's certainly not a
Yeah. I'm going to give you a full assessment on this, right? So I've noticed you. I'll watch you on that because like we're next to each other. We're with
Yeah.
each other, and you have a lot on your mind. But what I love is because you've got a lot of oars in the water, so you have a ton on your mind, but you're able to just cast it aside for a second and be fully with a person.
Yeah, thanks.
And very rarely have I ever seen, if at all, and I'm just saying this so I don't know that I've ever seen you just in a transactional moment with somebody like, let me just get through this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There might be some people out there that have seen me in that setting, but
Yeah.
I certainly, I learned that from my dad and from others.
Your dad was really good with people.
Very,
Yeah.
very, and making people feel like they're the only person in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think, I think all of us that are connected with you feel that way about you and the way your family serves others. I think
Thanks, man.
there's been role models in my life that have just shown how important that is. So
Yeah.
still, I can still think of moments where I wish I had those words back, or I wish I had that moment back.
All of us do. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for that.
Well, what about your dad? He taught you a ton. Relationally, you said he's great with people, and I know he was a huge influence in your life.
Yeah. My dad passed in 2018, suddenly, middle of the night, really no warning sign. You and LB were right there with us every step of the way thereafter. My dad was an incredible guy. You know, he was first and foremost a great father and a great husband, and to my mom, and successful businessman. And
But you guys were extremely close too.
we were,
I know.
we were. He
He
had
taught you everything. I remember you're wearing a blazer today because
he would, he'd be happy about that. He was a very successful business person, and yet I don't remember one moment where he wasn't there as a kid. And
wow.
so I think about that often as now we're raising kids, and you know, we can all look back on our childhood and say, like, man, I wish that would have happened a little bit differently. But now watching it as a parent myself, and somebody in business, I'm like, you know what, hey, my dad might not have been perfect in that one area, but I give him a pass because I can see just how stressful that is. And but yeah, he retired early, which was a goal of his, and had an incredible career at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Started with them when they were essentially a startup company. They were a company that and still believes in young people and leadership in young people, maybe even earlier than they think that they should be in leadership. And so my dad had that opportunity from the Taylor family when he was fresh out of college in Tampa, and he opened up the Baltimore division for Enterprise in '85, and then opened up '86, and then opened up the Pittsburgh division in '89.
Wow.
And he retired early, and it was right when I was starting to get a knack for business. And so for, unfortunately only a couple of years, but, he basically became my business coach for a couple of years. And,
Wow.
Yeah. I wish I had him, a lot longer than we did, but that was, some incredible opportunities for a young person in business to learn from somebody like that, and it being your dad,
Right. Who genuinely cares.
Yeah.
He wants to see the best for you. He doesn't want anything out of you, but you to have the best life you possibly can.
Yeah. He had some strange, at the time I thought they were strange rules as a kid. Like, I was joking with my kids the other day, Nicholas was wearing a NASCAR t-shirt. I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't think I was allowed to wear a t-shirt until I was a senior in high school. I went to a public high school, but I was required to wear khakis and a golf shirt, like I was going, and I hated it growing up. And now the only thing I have in my closet is khakis and a golf shirt. And
I remember calling you out, like, Chuck, why don't you ever wear a sweatshirt? And you told me that story.
I don't own one. And I think,
You put one on though for me. You wore one. We got to hang out. I got to see Chuck Nettles in it.
I have a nice collection now, thanks to yours and Lauren's encouragement. Yeah, that's good.
Leisure wear's in these days.
I'll tell you, my dad, I would, when I was growing up, I would turn my hat around backwards. I'd wear my hat backwards, and he would just kind of like smack it off my head.
Yeah.
And we don't wear hats like that. And the first time I ever handed a hat to my son, he put it on backwards immediately. And I have that picture.
What'd you do?
I let him do it. I let him do it. It was just kind of like I saw it as a moment where, like, maybe my dad's looking down and saying, "Hey, it's okay.
It's okay."
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
Like he never saw over at the top. Like what if I'm putting a hat on, I'm arm wrestling somebody, I got to turn it around. It's like turn the machine on. I think that's what he said.
No, we never got
saw
there.
that.
No,
all right.
no.
It's like one of my family favorites.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Nora even loves the movie.
Really?
Lauren loves it.
Yeah.
You have to love Over the Top. You got to watch it sometime.
I gotta watch
Nicholas, you and Nicholas will love
All right,
it.
cool.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's a good one. Charlotte would probably knowing Charlotte, I think she would like it too.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
We'll check it out.
Yeah. Maybe a couple things you have to censor in there, but it's like pretty relatively.
Nowadays, you got to censor commercials. You got to censor everything. So we're used to that.
We're used to it. Yeah, we're used to it. Yeah, but I remember when your dad passed, man.
Yeah.
And I remember how much that obviously hit you because you guys were together that night, right?
Yeah, we were together that night. It was 2 days after Valentine's Day. So Sarah was out at a school dance, chaperoning a school dance. And my mom had a function at work, I believe. She's had an amazing career also. She's been in academics her whole life. She was a professor at California University of PA, and she's a published author. She's just finished them. Yeah, she's incredible.
What's her book called again? I'll look it up. No, I do the same thing. I'm writing a book. I can't even tell you what the title is. I'm almost done with it.
It's called Grab Life by the Bungees. Sorry,
that's it. Grab Life by the Bungees.
Grab Life by the Bungees.
And she talks about this journey in the book, right?
Big time.
I've heard her speak on it.
And
a couple times. She's really a brilliant communicator.
She's incredible. The book's incredible. It's been really helpful for my brother and I to read that book.
We'll put a link to the book.
Yeah,
for anybody.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And
is it on Amazon?
It is. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. And she certainly has a heart for widows, and we've been able to share the book now with some close family friends that have lost loved ones, and the book's incredible. I mean, it's really helped me and my brother out a lot. But no, so yeah, that night, my wife was out at a school dance, my mom was out, and so at the time we only had one. We had Charlotte, who was 2 years old, and Sarah was pregnant with Abigail, and my dad came over to have dinner with me and Charlotte, and we just hung out that night, and grateful for those last moments together, not knowing anything. We had just moved into a new house. He had helped us move in, and the next 24 hours was just like a whirlwind. And we all, unfortunately, we all go through loss, and so we're not unique in that regard, but everybody's loss is unique. And I can now look back on that day. It's still the worst day of my life, and I've said this now publicly a couple times. It is the worst day of my life, and I hope I don't go through something as challenging as that again. It also became the day that I found purpose professionally. I found purpose, as a father and a husband, and so in some ways, and I know my close friends and family would hear my heart in this. It was the worst day of my life, and it turned out to be a day that was a turning point, and ultimately was used for good. And God was wrapped all through that story. Yeah.
He walks with us, in those valleys. Doesn't mean the valleys aren't the most difficult things we go through, though.
Yeah.
And we always tell people, hey, you're never going to get over this, but
Right.
God will help you to adjust.
Right.
And to those filled with faith, when we walk through these circumstances with people, no matter how difficult it is, I found you'll always see the hand of God if you look for it. You'll always see the last time he came over and you spent time together.
Yeah.
Just you and Charlotte. Man, I'm really glad you had that time.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. And it, my mom just lost her dad, my grandfather, in much different circumstance. He's been struggling for a long time, and so you watch the difference between the two of those things. And there's positives of somebody living a long, successful life, obviously.
Yeah.
And there's also a lot of pain in caring for somebody through the last few years of their life. And on the flip side, I can look at my dad passing and say that, I've had confirmation from several cardiologists that have told me your dad didn't feel any pain. And that there's certainly some solace in that, but at the same time, he's gone 30 years shorter than he should have been. But leaning on
when you love somebody, it's always one more day.
Yeah.
I wish I had just one more day,
Right.
just one more conversation, just one more. I wish I could have him back to.
Right.
And that's my grandfather for me.
Yeah.
I wish
Yeah.
I could just take him to breakfast one more time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I lean on you could quote the scripture for me, but that when it talks about our life being like a
Vapor,
puff of steam off of a hot cup, and whether it's 30 years, 60 years, or 90 years, in the grand scheme of things, I'm confident I'm gonna see him again, and it's good. But through that,
that's what the word meaningless in Ecclesiastes. It's all meaningless. It's the word, I think it was hevel in the original Hebrew, which means like it's a puff of smoke. It's a steam. It just kind of dissipates and goes. And that's referenced by James in the New Testament too.
Yeah.
And it's true. It goes by quick. And I wish we knew. I wish we knew more of when those times are coming. But in some ways, I'm glad we don't. Like it's such a weird. It's even hard to process.
I agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. Certainly. And I think just continuing to meditate on the fact that, only God can turn this into something good.
Yeah.
And in the moment, I remember somebody, they were certainly trying to say the right thing, but said that to me like too soon, and I wanted to say, come on,
You couldn't even wrap your mind around that.
But
at
now
the
I
time.
look back, and like you said, you can see God's hand on everything. I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
you know. And I do still feel like I have a relationship with my dad through my mom, through my brother, through my 2-year-old at the time 2, now 8-year-old,
totally.
through my wife, and
Yeah.
through his friends who I've become a lot closer with.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been.
At the funeral, there was a gentleman who came up to you, and that really changed your life. Like that, we're talking about the good that came out of that.
Yeah.
Well, God met you. He brought some men into your life when you needed it.
Yeah.
Through this friend of your dad's. Did you know him prior or?
Yeah, so his name is Andy Miller. He's an incredible guy, incredible man of God, lives in Tampa. He's retired now also. He had an incredible career with Enterprise Rent-A-Car also.
Okay.
He and my dad were friends when they were in their 20s working together in Tampa. And Andy, I certainly knew who Andy was because my dad always talked about him fondly. And Andy and I had played golf together maybe once prior to my dad passing.
Yeah.
He had come up to visit my dad, but I didn't know Andy very well other than I knew him in concept. And I could remember sitting at Atria's. You and Lauren were there after the funeral, and Andy came up to me, put his arm around me at the bar there. You know, my dad said if he ever died, he died prematurely. He wanted to have a party at Atria's afterwards, which we did. And this Andy Miller, Andy put his arm around me at the bar and said, "Hey, I want you to come on this golf trip. It's a really special thing. It's in August." And I remember saying, "Andy, I don't, my dad just died. I don't want to go on a golf trip." And he's, this is a different golf trip, and what he was inviting me on, I don't know if we've talked a lot since. He didn't know where I was in my faith journey. Mm-hmm. He was being obedient to God, and he knew that I needed men like him and his friends to wrap their arms around me in a tough time. Yeah. And so he invited me to this group called JPT, which stands for Joyful, Prayerful, Thankful, from 1 Thessalonians 5:16 through 18. And the group started 21 years ago. A handful of guys got together that were big-time golf guys and said, let's put a retreat together. And the tagline has always been men helping men become better men. And the retreat every year opens up with, hey, this is not a religious meeting. This meeting's about Jesus. And so we drop it's a group of 72 guys from all over the country. I'm one of the younger ones in the group. And so, and I can remember back, Andy invites me to the first retreat I went to. It was over my mom's birthday, the year that Dad died. And I can look back at that and it turned out everything was fine. We were able to, I shortened the trip by a day, I think, and made it home in time. But there was definitely some things pulling me away from going on this golf trip, not knowing exactly what it was. But I showed up and Chris Hodges from Church of the Highlands, who I had met through you and John Nuzzo at Victory prior. Chris Hodges was leading the discussion with this group of men after they'd play golf.
It's a nice surprise.
And I said, oh my goodness, what is this golf trip that Andy had invited me to? And so
Was Bizette there too?
Rick Bizette was not that year, but the next year he was. And
you guys have become close through the years too.
Yeah. And so just, I would not have gotten into this group. I would have not have met these guys if it wasn't for my dad passing. Yeah. And, of course I would trade everything to have my dad back for 5 minutes. But when I look at what's transpired in my life after that, and Andy's act of obedience, inviting me to, and it was, this group is a group that it fills up, these trips fill up very quickly. Yeah. And Andy had to pull some strings with the group's founder, Tom Case, who's now like a second father to me. Mm-hmm. Tom's from Fort Myers and one of the most obedient, God-fearing men I've ever met. And Tom founded this group and has grown it into what it is today. But I look back in these relationships that I've developed with guys and their families that, right at the moment where somebody needed big brother figures, father figures in their life, God showed up and showed up through these guys. And since then, more people locally here in Pittsburgh and through different organizations that I've become involved with, I could point to, a few people in particular that have really just put a hand out for no reason other than, they wanted to help and have become mentors. And so that group, JPT, has been a huge blessing. I could think, you could name a city and I know I have somebody there that is a Christian that I could rely on.
Yeah. Wow.
In almost every major city in the United States because of Andy Miller's obedience.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing.
It's a cool group.
Yeah. And so now you're in business. Okay. So you have since started your own business. You have the 10 Memorial.
Yeah.
You have a lot going on, but you have good support around you.
Yeah.
To just walk with integrity, right? As a Christian businessman and walking into different rooms. We've had the conversation. I know that's not, for me, it's not easy as a pastor, to be the same person in every room. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think,
I'm a pastor, like that's expected.
Yeah.
But, you can let your guard down in certain rooms and just like,
right.
Or, you could pretend to be somebody that you're not in order to gain acceptance.
Right.
And the temptation's there for everybody.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you're an incredible role model in that regard. And I've told you the message that you gave a few months ago on integrity and just the true definition of integrity, walking into every single room, the exact same person. That was a great gut check for me, because I could admittedly say that at that very moment, I wasn't always doing that. And so a great course correct for me. But these guys, whether it's the JPT group or other guys that have come into my life that have helped, stand with me in difficult times, difficult decisions, help me prioritize things when life gets very, very full, which it is. And I'm certainly blessed because of that.
Yeah.
When life gets very, very full, it's important to have people around you to help you course correct and remind you what's the most important.
Right. Yeah. Because our scope is so limited.
Yeah.
Like I think about, I was in Singapore with Mark Geppert.
Yeah.
And I didn't travel with Mark, but I went to one of his events and, Matt's one of my best friends, obviously, but I'm listening to him talk. He's retired, quote unquote. He's never going to retire. Like the guy's going to reach people everywhere. Like that's what he's never going to stop. And honestly, the moment you stop when you're older, it gets a little scary.
Right.
You got to keep moving. You have to keep vision. So he still has vision in him and he's working. But the way he got to where he was, I'm in the room with these people and I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is a legacy.
Yeah.
This is somebody I'd love to model my life after.
Yeah. And
I see, hey, our values are so similar.
Yeah.
The things that are coming out of his mouth. So I'm like, in my scope, in my context, I'm like, man, I had the thought I have to be someone else in order to reach a lot of people and help somebody. I can't authentically be me. And that's the temptation that I fight, right? Yeah. But being around Mark, I'm like, oh no, like I can change the world in the way that God has mandated me to, but stick to my values as well. It's just so good, healthy to see that. So I'm sure those guys are a great reminder, just like Mark is with me. Yeah,
they are. And one of them in particular, and I've shortly after my dad passed, one of the things that I think about daily is, my dad was going to continue to do some incredible things over the next 30 years. I know he was.
Yeah.
He had retired early. He had obtained success and, he was going to have a lot of fun, and he was also going to give back in a big way. And, somebody in particular reminded me that, you can be the person that continues his legacy. Mm-hmm. And every day when you wake up, you can be the one, and not in a burdensome way, but to be the person that continues his legacy.
Yeah.
And, so I've used that as a lens, and that's been.
And that's how you maintain that connection.
Yeah.
Long term. You're
Yeah.
teaching the lessons and the good, the bad,
Yeah.
teaching the lessons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Making better the wrongs and keeping all the great things. But yeah, that legacy is a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm proud of you,
Sure.
Chuck.
Thanks, man.
I'm proud of you.
Thanks.
Really
Thanks.
proud of you.
Thanks.
So what is integrity? We'll end with that. What's the definition of integrity to you?
Walking into every room the exact same person, and that's a continuous improvement process for me as life becomes more and more full and time becomes more and more valuable.
Yeah.
I remind this sounds goofy, but every time I touch a door handle, after that message you gave, I'm continuously reminding myself. Anytime I touch a door handle, car door, doorknob, I'm reminding myself. Remember who you are when you walk in this door. You're the exact same person.
Yeah.
Whether it's walking into a nonprofit situation or a for-profit situation or church.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you and Lauren giving us the ability to walk into church as I'm an imperfect person, and allowing us to be ourselves and not feel that we have to be something or somebody that we're not. So I'm grateful.
Well, the same, man.
Grateful for that.
The same.
Yeah.
I don't have to be someone I'm not with you.
No, you don't.
No,
you don't.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Proud of you, Chuck.
Thanks,
really
man.
love your
You too.
friendship and
Likewise.
Just honored to be your friend, man.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Love you, bro.
It's been great.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.